So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the virtual chapter. This is our March 2018 meeting, and tonight we have a special guest, Anthony Jacquin, coming to us from the United Kingdom, and we were thrilled to have him with us so late at night. What a lovely thing for you to do for us, Anthony. We'll be looking forward to talking to you in just a little while. I do need to make just a couple announcements to get the ball rolling here. I want to let you all know that, as I said, we are recording this program. The recording will be posted for a replay tomorrow on the virtual chapter group on Facebook. If you're a member of that group, you can find it there. If you're a member of IACT or IMDHA, you can find it on the IACT IMDHA forum, where it will also be posted, hopefully by about noon tomorrow. And it's also posted on the IACT and IMDHA websites. If you go to either of those websites, there's a banner across the top, and one of the options is conference. Oh, I'm saying this wrong. Never mind that I've even said that. It will not be posted on the IMDHA website. That's just the cough medicine talking to you. But it will be posted on the forum, and it will be posted on the Facebook group. So do look there if you want to see it again, or if you want to point your friends to it and let them know what we talked about tonight, and that's where it will be for you. If you are members of IACT or IMDHA, you are entitled to CEUs for attending this meeting, and I suspect that a number of hypnosis organizations will give members CEUs for attending this as well. But if you're a member of IACT or IMDHA, you can use simply by going to the website for the appropriate organization. If you log in with your member ID, there's a little screen that pops up where you can enter your CEUs. Tell them that you came to the virtual chapter and that you want to get that hour and a half back, and they will give you credit for it. So there's that. Next month, we are going to be talking with Alberto Rezende de Lizola, who is the gentleman in Brazil that created the Brazilian hypnosis conference that we were at the month before last, I guess it was now. Quite a talented teacher, and somebody that I think that you'll particularly enjoy. And the month following that, I haven't even told Karen yet, so I hope that this is okay with you. Karen, where
I'm going to find out, like on Twitter. Is that the way I'm going to find out, Michael? I'm kidding.
No,
yes,
right
Karen.
You're going to find out right now. We're going to be talking with Ken Guzzo. He's going to be, he's a real personable fellow. Everybody loves him, and he's going to talk about conversational hypnosis. I saw him do a really nice presentation out in California last weekend, and it was so good and so easy to understand, really good mind-bending language, to borrow a phrase from a certain count that we know. We'll get a chance to see him as well. We also, by the way, and this is going to be a surprise to Karen and a surprise to all of you, this chapter is endorsed, as you know, by IACT and IMDHA. We were actually a standalone entity that they wanted to get a group going here in Florida, and they adopted my local group. So it blossomed into this, and they are certainly sponsors of this meeting. But also the International Hypnosis Federation has given us their endorsement as well. So now we are also officially a chapter for them.
Excellent.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Yes.
And we'd love everybody to join. So, we really aren't exclusive. And if we get people in some of the other organizations and they have an interest in letting us be considered a chapter for them, just let us know, and we'll acknowledge them for doing that.
The more the merrier, and the more we have, the more we learn.
The more we learn.
Right.
And the better we learn, the deeper we go.
That's right.
And so going a little deep for a minute, I would just like to acknowledge, it was just before the last meeting, so we made reference to it, but we weren't prepared to do anything. We lost our friend and colleague, Michael Elmer. Some of you know Michael. He was really a contributor to the hypnosis community. And so we just want to take a moment to acknowledge him and to acknowledge his contribution. And the best way that I can do that is to share with you a wonderful little piece that he's really popularized. Many of you already know it, and that is quantum focusing. And it's a delightful self-hypnosis technique that just takes 2 minutes to do, which is one of the things that I really like about it. It is suggested that you use it several times a day. The way that I think about it is it's like having a reset button whenever you find yourself just a little bit off your path or a little bit off center and you need to pull yourself back. It does a really nice job for that. So in honor of Michael, I would ask you to just take a moment, please, and make sure that you're in a comfortable position that you can maintain for the next 2 minutes of clock time. That shouldn't be too difficult. And just let yourself settle in for a moment, and you might just take a gentle breath and close your eyes and turn your attention inside and become aware of the experience of being in a body. And just recognize that there is, right there where you sit, a U-shaped place in space that is shaped just like you, of course. And that you fill it completely from the top of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes. And this process works around 3 affirmations. So I'll invite you to to say to yourself silently inside the first affirmation, which is, I live with a happy heart. And just take a moment to allow any images or thoughts or feelings associated with happiness of heart to come into your awareness, to come into your mind, and enjoy those thoroughly. That's right. And then just gently and easily, you can let go of that for now. It's nice to know that that's in there and available to you. And move on to the second affirmation, which is, I live with a playful spirit. And just take a moment to tap into that spirit of playfulness that lives within you. If you have a tendency towards mischief, you might even feel a little sparkle in your eye as you consider this. And just enjoy the playfulness that is available in you and through you, and any thoughts and ideas and images associated with that. And then move on to the third affirmation, which is, I live with a peaceful mind. Just allow yourself to touch into that spirit of peacefulness within you. And enjoy that peaceful feeling for a moment or so. Any images, thoughts, feelings associated with it. And then finally, just take a moment to acknowledge yourself and your ability to access happiness, playfulness, peacefulness, anytime, anywhere, that these things will be useful to you. Isn't it nice to know that they live inside, available to you anytime? And then finally, the final affirmation, which you might adjust to your own needs, but in a general sense, and in a group like this, usually use an affirmation like this, and just to shout out silently inside, I deserve to be healthy and happy. As you return your attention then to the activities of the day, to the things that are going on around you, bring your attention back outside and go about your business for the rest of the day. Something that's recommended that you use this several times a day, and what a lovely thing it is to be reminded of those things. So thank you for letting me share that with you. It was a real contribution of Michael's, taken first to the AIDS community when the medical community didn't have any response for them, and they just needed something to do. After people in the AIDS community were taking more and more drugs, they stopped seeing Michael and his cohort, Alan Barsky, who put this together. So Michael and Alan asked themselves, who else would it be good for? And it occurred to them that there were people with fibromyalgia and people with irritable bowel syndrome who similarly didn't get a good response from the medical world. And as they started using this with those people, they were actually showing measurable symptomatic results. that was really encouraging to them. And finally, one day they said, actually, you could use this for just about anybody in just about any situation. And there doesn't even need to be a situation. And isn't that a nice thing to know? So an opportunity daily to just really get in contact with yourself and the things that live at the center of your being. So thank you, Michael. We wish you joy and blessings on your journey, and we'll see you somewhere around sooner or later, I'm sure. So that's that. Now, I was going to talk here. I didn't want to end this prelude on the note about the passing of a beloved friend like that. So I was going to tell you about this exciting class that Karen and I have been doing, but she spilled the beans.
Oh,
and,
well, we've had a request for information about how to join this level 2 if you want to impart that knowledge, Michael.
Well, that's exactly it. So the course is designed so that people can take the live weekends or can actually just do the online part separately. If you don't have the whole sequence with the lives and the online, it doesn't qualify for certification. But you don't necessarily need to do it for certification. So the first week of the online sessions is Monday the 25th of this month. So,
Sunday the 25th. Sunday.
Oh, yeah, daylight savings time. I forgot. Thanks, Karen. So Sunday the 25th, and it's going to be great. So we're really looking forward to it. If any of you have an interest in that, you can contact me or you can contact Karen, and we'll be happy to let you know how you can get involved with it, and we'll get you set up. So, anything else, Karen? What's going on in Chicago?
Chicago is about to experience spring, and that's a wonderful thing. And I'm about to take a break and go out to Seattle for a couple of days and hang with some hypno sisters out there and get together with Kelly T. Woods and Roger Moore and some others out in Seattle. So that'll be quite a bit of fun. And then I'll be back. I'm not leaving till after tomorrow night when we have Michael and Don Pellis on our presenter series for IACT IMDHA. And I will be back next Wednesday when I will be on along with Preethi Neal for our presenter series. So don't miss that either.
It's going to be lovely to be interviewed on the presenter series for a change.
Yeah, yeah.
The nice thing is when I don't have to answer questions, nobody can put me on the spot, so I get to say whatever I want. So you behave, young lady, when you're interviewing.
Oh, did anyone else hear that as a challenge issued? If I were you, I would check in tomorrow night and just to see what happens now.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my lovely and talented cohort here, Karen Hand, I acknowledge her every single week, and I'm very, very sincere about this. It has been such a blessing to have you, Karen, as a part of this chapter. I was doing it by myself for a long time, and it certainly makes things a whole lot easier. So thanks again for being with us. And now be nice to me tomorrow, okay?
I will be nice to you because I definitely missed you last week. It is much easier to do it when you have two to bounce off of each other than doing it alone. So you were definitely missed last week. Glad you're back. And I can't wait to hear from Anthony. I just can't wait. I'm so excited about this. So I have no other announcements or anything else I want to say.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to look at a little bit of write-up that I have here before I introduce Anthony, because I've known of Anthony for quite a while. You know, I used to do a lot of training in England, in Leicester in particular, and at that time. And one of the deals that we did in Leicester was we would take the class to this Indian restaurant called Nimsab. Lovely, lovely place for dinner. And there was a fellow that came around to our table doing card tricks and putting hypnotists, he didn't know who we were at first, into trance unexpectedly. And we asked him what the hell did he think he was doing, and he said that he was a head hacker and that he had been inspired by none other than Anthony Jacquin. So I figured that sooner or later I'd have to meet this fella, and was just lucky enough to have chased him out of the room with my plague in Brazil, but got to meet him there. Anthony started his work with hypnotherapy, and specifically an approach that was shaped by parts work and idiomotor communication and a blend of direct and permissive approaches. He later got into performance, and he wrote a book called Impromptu Hypnosis, a lovely, lovely book, by the way. The acronym is RIP, which I find very, very interesting, but it means reality is plastic. I would encourage you to look that up because it's just a delightful read. And this all led him to training people in this style, and many of those happen to be mystery performers. That is, mentalists, hypnotists, and magicians. And so he does performance training or training for mystery performers these days. He's got a big training coming up in Berlin that I'm going to want to talk to him about shortly. And he trains people in hypnosis and in hypnotherapy. And his father, Freddie Jacquin, also is quite a contributor to the field and developed, some of you may be familiar with the arrow technique, which we like quite a bit. So I could just go on and on and on, but I think what I'm going to do, Anthony, is give you an opportunity to say hello and to tell your story. So hi, Anthony. Welcome and glad to have you here.
Hello, Michael. It's nice to see you again. Brazil was obviously a fantastic time, despite the fact that you had to suffer with the plague out there. It was special, wasn't it?
It was indeed. So tell us about Anthony. How really did you get involved with all of this?
Okay, I'll keep the history as brief as I can, but it was a long time ago. My dad decided to get into hypnosis. He's always been into kind of personal development and that kind of thing. And as soon as he did, he shared what he had learned and gave me a few sheets of paper and things like that. And I kind of had a go. I stumbled through my first quit smoking session when I was at university, and it worked. And I did another one, and it worked. And I did another session with someone who had some time in the studio. And it was rare for them to have recording time. And believe it or not, they got signed by a producer walking past. So that was it. I was done. I was in, and I've never kind of turned away from hypnosis ever since. It was a few years after that I got full-time into hypnotherapy around 2001. For some reason in the UK at that point, it was easy to instantly turn that into a full-time business. So I went from kind of no clients to 25 clients a week and just kind of knocked that out like that for 5 or 6 years solidly. And then started to get into performance hypnosis. I wasn't desperate to be a performer, but I was just kind of intrigued with what you could do. And obviously we had Darren Brown in the UK on TV by then, confusing NLP practitioners and hypnotherapists everywhere. But I was kind of sucked in and suddenly found myself in the world of magic. In fact, the first thing I was asked to do was just steal people's things with hypnosis. It was called Hypno Survival. A few people here will have seen that video for performance purposes, for entertainment purposes.
Well, and for the record, Anthony, just so you know, that video has been posted on the
kind of, can you do these things that we read about in George Esterbrook's? Can you do that? Can you make someone believe you're their favorite film star in the street? So I wrote a book about impromptu hypnosis, which you mentioned. That led to me starting to teach people, in the beginning, just magicians. It was kind of a closed door affair, so we could be open about other magical secrets and how to kind of integrate them with hypnosis. It wasn't a stage hypnosis course. It was more about mixing these skills into a close-up performance. And then, as it kind of went on, more and more people wanted to do it who were not in that world. So I created another impromptu course. And that took us around the world a few times, like Malaysia, Australia, crazy, how it's kind of gone. And throughout that time, since about 2004, I've also been teaching hypnotherapy with my dad. We work the same kind of system and approach, the component parts of which you'd certainly be very familiar with. I was very influenced early on by John Overdorf, training trances, and Ernest Rossi's write-up of Erickson's work and his work that followed. So that's always kind of shaped what I've done in the therapy room. So I continue to do therapy and teach therapy, but I guess I'm better known for, doing silly things and having fun with hypnosis. But my main, day to day, my main thing is therapy.
Yeah. The video that you mentioned, by the way, is actually been posted on the virtual chapter. It's been linked to on the virtual chapter Facebook group. So for
Yeah.
those of you who are a member of the group, you may have seen it all out there. And if you haven't, you can certainly go have a look at it. And just curious, just by the way, if any of you are not members of the virtual chapter, please go out there and join. Virtual chapter is just a group on Facebook, and it's where we announce the upcoming meetings and who our guests are. So I was intrigued at first, of course, with this idea of head hacking. I love the phrase. I love the name, and I was myself a big Darren Brown fan. I didn't understand, by the way, as I often do not, that Darren was in the same profession that I was, but really enjoyed him. And now he's a huge sensation here. Again, a lot of attention recently in the States because a video that I guess y'all have already seen in Europe, the Push, is featured on Netflix starting this month, and getting quite a bit of attention here.
Yeah, I mean, he's just brilliant, and if you get the chance to see his stage shows, even recorded, you'll just see a master at work. Even if you're kind of not really into magic, mind games, you'll just see a master at work, completely commanding the stage. So yeah, he's very, very popular in the UK and continues to innovate and inspire, you know, the whole generation of people doing that kind of trickery and playing those kind of mind games has grown up around him. So Hypno Survival seems like a long time ago. It was over 10 years, and I watch it occasionally just to go on a kind of video diet. But you know, it was fun, and it actually changed everything for me. Doing street hypnosis, you know, I've been confined to the therapy room, kind of rolling out a system, which I still very much love and very fond of, but doing street hypnosis without cameras, without an audience, without any great reason for people to play up and live up to it, kind of changed things for me in the therapy room too. It made me just use the variety of phenomena more, and recognize that, you know, our personal reality really is a fiction. It may seem solid and real, and it may seem reliable, but ultimately it isn't. It can be provoked and changed and shifted, you know, in many different ways. So
Anthony, do you ever use some of the, I like to call it hocus pocus hypnosis or the magic hypnosis in the therapy room? Do you ever use it to help a client realize that they can experience hypnosis or hypnotic phenomena?
I wouldn't use a trick, to be honest, but it's magic enough in my therapy sessions anyway. And the reason I say that is because I use the kind of basic common phenomena like ideomotor movement and challenge type suggestions in therapy. And as I said there, I'm a big fan of the work of Ernest Rossi, and to think that he's studied with Erickson for 15 years and wrote up the entire body of his work, but then creates magic with magnetic hands, is a wonderful thing. And fortunately for me, using those phenomena in a therapy session has been there kind of right from the beginning. I just kind of got into it that way and thought that's how you do it. And to add, you know, I'm happy to demonstrate the variety of phenomena in a session, but most of the time, physical suggestions, emotional suggestions, and the occasional challenge suggestion are magical enough. I don't kind of get out the ESP cards and pretend to read their mind to get rapport or whatever. If that's kind of what you mean, that would seem deceptive. And
not really the ESP kind of stuff, but just some of the fun stuff, just some of the show stuff.
Maybe if I'm dealing with, you know, young people, teenagers and stuff like that, you know, I always have a pack of cards on me. I could kind of get into it very, very easily. But actually, most of the time, I don't do that in a therapy session. It's, you know.
Define a challenge suggestion, if you would.
Encouraging people to fight against the phenomena that you've created. So the difference between arm levitation, which is very much a collaborative act, and that's how it kind of feels, and it can still be a very strong experience for someone, and then just telling someone to do their utmost to put it down, to consciously use all of your effort and try to put your arm down, that for some reason for many people is a stronger hypnotic experience, simply because they experience non-volition in a way that's controlled and they're comfortable with, but they have a rather than it just being a collaborative experience, it becomes an entirely non-volitional experience. And again, you don't need to do that kind of thing in therapy, but I find it provokes a strong moment in a therapeutic exchange where I can try to do my work in a sentence.
Sure. And similar to those ideas about you can't open your eyes no matter how hard you try, or you can't stand up out of the chair no matter how hard you try. There's that double edge to it, that there's this phenomena happening and you can't do anything about it. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, it's not to make the person look foolish. And again, it can be kind of, slightly more subtle in terms of their arm. Generally, I create ideomotor movement that often leads into arm levitation, or both arms, and we may kind of point that toward the sort of peak of the session. Let's say the part is taking that choice and a decision is made and everything kind of happens. I try and encourage that kind of symmetry and things in a session. I don't always get it, right. But if I was doing that, and again, this is very much kind of inspired by the way my dad works in that moment, when he'll get kind of very direct. So let's say you were working through a kind of, single parts, like a 6-step type thing, just some kind of parts negotiation is how we generally frame it. And you're getting to, the hand is lifted and it's search for new choices and it's about to take that choice, then we may well kind of encourage the person at that point, as we suggest, when that part takes that choice, your hands will come together, they will lock together, open your eyes and try and keep them apart, do your utmost, pull as hard as you can. So it's kind of I guess, part of, suggesting there is a bigger part of them, or whatever. I mean, it however you use that metaphor, I just find using phenomena within techniques like parts work and many of the other kind of things that hypnotherapists commonly use adds to the experience. The experience is real, even if ultimately this stuff and a challenge suggestion is a suggested effect. It's not fundamentally different to the stuff we did before. It's just being framed as look how independently your mind can work. Look how puny your conscious effort can seem. Maybe we could just let go of that. So there's lots of ways I'll use it, but primarily, I've only recently started to watch some of Michael's videos, and there's a lot of creative handwork and ideomotor work, and that's kind of what I've been doing for 20 years. It's magical enough.
Sure. I really, part of the reason that I especially wanted to have you here is that something that comes up in hypnosis classes regularly is some sort of discomfort among hypnotists with stage hypnosis and performance hypnosis, and the idea that this casts a bad shadow on hypnotherapy and confuses the public about hypnosis and what it can do. I'm sure this is an issue that you've had to deal with and clarify for people. And I just would love to hear your thinking about it and how it is that you explain that to people when they have those considerations.
Well, the way I explain it, should that come up, first of all, let me say it just hasn't been a big problem. I appreciate some people's experiences. Maybe they meet a dozen or more people in their life who say, "Oh, I've seen stage hypnosis. That's a bit scary."
Yeah, well, and by the way, Anthony, forgive me for interrupting, but I don't get this objection from clients. I get this objection because when somebody has decided to be a client, they've already made some choice about that. I get it more from people that are training to be hypnotherapists and...
okay.
Right?
Well, maybe at that point they think it will impact upon their credibility and possibility that they could be taken seriously, and they don't want to be associated with that stuff because it looks weird or fake or silly or embarrassing or whatever. They may have those concerns, but they should probably concentrate on building their credibility by doing the work and speaking to people who are interested in their job, and realizing that the vast majority of people have never actually met a hypnotist before. They may have seen a stage hypnosis show, but actually most people have only seen that on TV. They don't know a great deal about it. So there's that. First of all, it's just not a big problem for me. But in terms of people who are training, making that association, I would actually say dig into the archives. We've been snowed in here recently. We had this bizarre weather pattern and a late winter appeared out of nowhere. So I decided to kind of read pretty much all of the certainly 19th century and early of 20th century classics of hypnosis: Esdale, Estabrooks, Elliotson, and particularly Bernheim. It's all available for free online. You can read these PDFs. And one of the things that kind of stood out is just how, and I also kind of reread McGill, and it's just how much they kind of borrowed from each other. It's the same in the world of mentalism, actually. Performers of mentalism want it to be as real as possible, and often they're kind of borrowing things from the spiritualism movement. They writing messages in secret ways and doing weird things. And when I look at kind of Bernheim, he literally borrows much of his approach off of like hypnotists like Donato, famous really performance mesmerists and stage hypnotists who are traveling around. So many of the lines that we still say are right there in these books that are 120 years old. So I'm not concerned about it. And should someone ask about it, I just say, have you seen a stage show? I mean, what do you think was happening? And ask them what they think was happening. I've done a number of stage hypnosis shows. I know for a fact the people up there are not pretending. So I wouldn't say that to a client. They're not pretending. They don't just want to show off. They're not just complying. It would be a terrible show if they did. I will reject those people. And if I detect someone's like that on stage, they normally get kind of rejected halfway through the show. It's just not, they can't act that well. Yes. So for me, actually seeing stage hypnosis, once you get past the silliness, and obviously if you're in the US or certain parts of it, you get past the kind of smuttiness of it all, because that's kind of where it goes. Everything has to be more outrageous. Sure. Once you look past that, you're seeing a display of the full spectrum of hypnotic phenomena every single night. You're doing things that most hypnotherapists will never do in their entire career. You're making people hallucinate without studying the language patterns of Erickson. You're simply getting up there and recognizing that it's game on. It's happening right now. People are suggestible. You're not creating them, you're not making them, you're finding them, and then you're displaying them. And there's lots that I don't like about stage hypnosis as an act. I'm just a bit tired of it as an act. It mostly is silly and slapstick, and that can be funny. Charlie Chaplin can be funny. Sure. And so can adult humor be funny. But I'm just not that interested in that traditional act anymore. Sure. I every now and again I do, but I just but it's not something I chase or pursue, but it's not something we should be afraid of. It's something we should embrace and realize we're part of the same thing.
And one of the things that I've noticed is and when my students raise this question, and one of the things that I've noticed among clients is that clients of mine who have seen stage hypnosis shows or anything like that are impressed by the power of what they've seen. Yeah. So
I mean, I can honestly say I've never done a show where at least one or two people haven't come up to me at the end and said, "Can you help me with this?" Yeah. It's like he was just doing the Beyonce, and they don't care. That's evidence enough that you could possibly make them smile.
If you can make me sing like Beyonce, you certainly can make me stop smoking cigarettes.
Exactly.
Well, it's not just stage show, it's Hollywood too. I mean, this new movie Get Out made my phones ring.
Oh my gosh.
all over the place, rather than become afraid of hypnosis, became very intrigued with it.
Very nice, with a teacup induction.
That's right. Anthony, I had a client who was so into that movie that at his next session, I had a teacup and I did the teacup induction for him. And he said afterwards, his words to me were, "That's the deepest I have ever sunk into hypnosis."
Wow. Of course. Well, let me tell you something about Amit, who you mentioned there, Michael, when he came to Leicester. So when we were first sort of getting into doing street hypnosis and kind of exploring what we could do, and I mean, Amit is just so bold. He has such courage. And this is the exact exchange that happened with him. We had a focus for about 6 months on people who collect subscriptions and signatures and things in the street. We call them chuggers, which is an affectionate name for charity muggers. But it's all for a good cause. So Amit would always give these people his time, try and learn, some of their kind of patterns of selling and interacting. And he was doing that, and the guy was, telling him about this charity. And then he just said to Amit, "So what do you do?" Amit said, "Have you seen Inception?" And the guy said, "Yes, I love Inception." And Amit said, "That's what I do. Sleep." And that was it. He didn't say, "I'm a hypnotist." He didn't say, "Do you want to see something?" He just said, "Sleep," and caught the guy and did a little show on the street. And that was a big moment for us. We've had lots of experiences like that where something just kind of falls away as being non-essential. It doesn't mean never introduce yourself or never say hypnosis, but experiences like that have sharpened our axe over the years and kind of just made us kind of dig into, really what is this about? And as I said, in a message to you, where does it point? What does it mean that someone's personal reality can change like that? And they can experience this kind of semi-transparent situation. What is that really suggesting to us? And that's what I'm interested in exploring, to be honest.
There's something in your book, by the way, that I really appreciate, and it's coming out in your description here, and that's the difference between being a hypnotist and being the hypnotist. It's a lovely frame, and I think a really useful one.
Yeah, sometimes it gets, people interpret that and wear that badge quite high. Like, I must be the hypnotist, which is not kind of quite what I meant. I just meant in a given situation, in an encounter, in a conversation, in a discussion, or in a performance, you're probably going to be the only one they meet. So you may as well kind of represent. I don't mean try and be the chief hypnotist. I mean just, represent on every level. Make that your thing. That people are intrigued as soon as they hear this word. It doesn't matter whether you're in a business networking meeting or you can be anywhere. As soon as you even say the H word, there's interest and intrigue and curiosity and sometimes a bit of fear, but emotion is good. And I encourage people to kind of live up to that as much as anything else, and to mean what they say. I mean, we're ultimately using words. We try to talk about it in sensible terms, but we're not that far away from, reading spells here. So I try to get people to kind of mean what they say, and part of that is adopting that little cloak of, okay, I will be the hypnotist. Yeah.
There are a number of questions that are showing up here in the chat room for you, Anthony, and
all right. Let's have a look.
It's all right. You don't need to pay any attention to that. We will feed them to you. One person is asking, do you think that the crowd consciousness contributes to suggestibility and receptivity of the participants in the vividness of the experiences? And I assume that's relating to stage shows and things like that we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you can use group effects in therapeutic situations as well. It's definitely contagious, and the evidence that it's contagious is if you look at the cognitive behavioral model and the work of Spanos and Gorosini, they showed pretty clearly that you can get better as a subject, and you can do that pretty quickly.
Sure.
Which was really good news. You know, if you're too tightly locked into a state or a trait-based model of hypnosis, then we kind of look at that bell curve and say they're good subjects and they're lows, and it's consistent because that's, you know, what the evidence suggested up to that point. Mm-hmm. But we know we can get better, and when you look at those the Carlton Skills Training Program and the things that kind of were spawned from that, there are really two parts to it. And one part is observing someone being hypnotized and experiencing it. And the other part, and you need both parts, is hearing from them a little bit about what that was like, or what they were doing when they were experiencing the effect of suggestion. And when that happens, very quickly other people around learn from that. So you're actually imagining stuff. So you weren't bothered by the fact that you had a voice, or you weren't thinking of what he was saying. He was saying balloons and you were saying basketballs. So you can learn pretty quick. And you know, I think that's often lost when we're presenting to groups, because we're so keen to kind of give a successful display up here. Mm-hmm. If we lead into it with some smaller things and actually allow people to give feedback,
sure,
then the rest of the group make their own connections. But on stage, I guess, you know, I do all sorts of performance, and a lot of my performances are kind of cabaret. They're like, I can do 5, 10, 15-minute shows, which would have terrified me when I was first doing stage hypnosis. It's like, I need 15 minutes to get people on stage and deepen them and all this stuff. But you know, in a normal show where you've got kind of normal time and a normal kind of selection procedure, if that's the way you want to work it, I believe you're finding people who are already on. You're not making them more suggestible. We're all already on. The induction doesn't shift our level of suggestibility a great deal. I really used to believe it did. The science suggests it doesn't. We appeal to it. It's already there. And some people are naturals and some people are not. But the joy of it is it's a skill. And therefore, if we take a skills-based frame, we can teach people how to get better. In a stage hypnosis show, I don't have time for that. So I just find the people who are the best.
And exactly right. And to give you credit for that, I watched you do it, and I saw you do it very well. In terms of, and I've often said that the real challenge of a good stage hypnotist has to do, and I assume this is all of performance hypnosis, has to do with being able to select volunteers that are going to be appropriate and do a good job in the first place.
Yeah, and actually making that bit entertaining, because that bit can be, it's actually very interesting because it's the bit that most people have never seen.
Yeah.
They've only ever seen the row of chairs on TV with people doing silly things.
Sure.
So that part of the show is quite, it's a bit of a curiosity and a fascination for most people, and there are different ways of doing it. And my way of doing it is just to say, you know, in a while there'll be people up here on stage in a state of hypnosis, but before we do that, I want to show you all something. Mm-hmm. And we'll play a little mind game, and their hands will get locked or hands will lift or whatever it happens to be. And it's still an invitation. It's not that it's coercive.
Sure.
Like, come up here or your hands will be locked forever.
But it gives you on stage the opportunity to see in the audience what's happening and to be able to select volunteers that are really going to do a good job.
Yeah, and you can be very transparent about that, or you can blur it a little bit and give the rest of the audience the feeling that it could very easily have been them. You know, and lots of different ways to play it. But I'm firmly of the view that it's like a call and response. We're just putting a call out, and you have to do that, you know, well, and you have to kind of act, you know, quickly. But once that's done, the kind of harder your test at that point, then the easier and more stable the rest of the show is going to be. Yes. So if you go and see Mark Savard, you know, he gets a lot of people on stage. He has a theatre of seats about 350. 350 people. He gets a lot of people on stage, so maybe 40, and it's a very nice, slow, progressive piece. And he ends up with 12, and imagine they're like properly cooked, so they tend to stay there for the rest of the show. In the UK, you go and see a stage show in a pub somewhere, not that there are many left, and you know, people are often getting rejected and the rows kind of getting smaller. So there are different ways of working it, but for me, you're displaying, you know, naturally receptive subjects. That's kind of what you do.
So I'm curious how you work that in your clinical setting. Are you pre-screening the clients, taking only certain clients? Are you taking everybody and massaging?
No, that's a good question, but no, I accept everyone into. They don't have to be a certain level of, you know, suggestibility or hypnotizability to benefit from therapeutic suggestions. So no, I don't pre-screen people in therapy, but the way my session progresses. A guy in the UK I admire very much, Barry Taine, put it like this when he spoke at a conference that I ran in London many years ago. He said, you know, some days you are a clinical hypnotist. So a bit like a stage hypnotist. You can literally say, you know, this screwdriver contains, you know, an anesthetic, and I'm going to inject it into your arm right now. You can literally be like you're on stage and just tell it how it is. But actually, most of the time, it's hypnotherapy. We have to kind of, you know, get a bit more. There may still be a hypnotic experience like ideomotor movement, but we need to kind of hook this in to actually some therapeutic techniques. And sometimes the person's just not responsive, and it's what he termed many years ago relaxotherapy. I know many people say it now. And the working life of most hypnotherapists, at least if they, you know, use for the hypnotic phenomena now and again, is going to be that. It's going to be a blend of that. Some days you just, it was straightforward and simple, and it was language anyone could understand. And other times, you know, you're going to need to spend some time and some several sessions with someone to kind of get into this and comb it out. But and
teach them how to do it. I think that's what you said. Actually, teach them how to do it.
Yeah, I guess it depends.
And they can improve as they go.
Yeah, do you mean teach therapy clients how to do it?
Well, I don't mean teach them how to do hypnosis, but teach them how to experience hypnosis. It can be learned.
Sure, teach them how to experience it. And,
yeah.
And when they experience it, give them a suggestion that they will be able to do this. You know, just directly suggest the key for self-hypnosis. It would be an opportunity missed if we didn't do that. And demonstrate that at the end of the session. Often that's the best gift. You know, even though the person came to get rid of a habit or a fear or compulsion or something, you hand out the key to self-hypnosis often enough, then some of those people, that will have a profound effect on many different areas of their life. You know, maybe 9 out of 10 will just never use it or do it once or twice. But if they really get self-hypnosis in very simple terms, you know, just like the exercise that Michael shared with us of Michael's earlier on, you know, for that can be a nice thing to do, or that could have transformative power for the right person at the right time. And giving someone a key to self-hypnosis is a bit like that. If they get it, if they realize they can just change their mind, they can watch this, they can see it come and go, this thought or this feeling, then you know, even the simplest tools are, that's the joy of this subject for me, is that the most basic tool is actually the best. You know, just start talking to yourself in this way. Start telling, you know, your reality what to do.
Yeah, brilliant. Now,
we have a question here about how you can you talk about your experience with hypnosis during surgery?
Oh,
yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with hypnosis during surgery. I've certainly worked with a number of people suffering with chronic pain. I've worked with a few people who were approaching surgery with fear or chemotherapy, and you know, no longer saw their medical team and treatment as their ally. So we're suffering a great deal. but I just haven't, worked with people who are going in for surgery. A couple of people I know in the UK have done the dental thing and had teeth pulled, and other work done without any anesthetic, just using self-hypnosis. But I don't have a great amount of experience with that.
David Ruby was asking a question earlier, and I haven't had a chance to present it to you just yet because it suggests that he knows a little bit more about you than we have yet said. So I need to sort of take it apart a little bit. He wants to know, how has your model of hypnosis changed since your days with head hacking and creating the automatic imagination model, if at all? And the thing that I'd like to ask you, because we haven't talked about that yet, is can you tell us what this thing called the automatic imagination model is about before we even answer the question?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. So when I wrote my little book, Reality is Plastic, I completely sidestepped committing to any theory of hypnosis. I said, here's a bit from Elmer, and here's a bit from Erickson, here's a quote from Braid, but ultimately this is what I do. It was a doing product. Okay. When I teach people therapy, I work from a kind of conscious, unconscious model of things. That's what I've done for a long time, even though I've, I have less and less belief in it as anything other than a model. I'm not satisfied about talking about the mind as these two kind of neat rooms. So basically, in all the products that followed my book, they were like my book. They were just how to do what I was doing and what I thought I could teach. And then I think around 2011, maybe 2014. I can't remember now. The years are kind of rolling into one. But my colleague and I at Head Hacking no longer exists, by the way. It's a company we ran for 7 years. Gradually moved toward quite a hard cognitive behavioral viewpoint of hypnosis. And so my practice, if you like, I guess was very Ericksonian, in that I just kind of saw the unconscious as a great big resource, a garage, and I could tap into that and show the client how to take what they wanted from that. And even though I was kind of working from that model and I was kind of rambling away and putting people into, what I thought was states of hypnosis, again, I sort of grew less and less enchanted with concepts like trance and depth, because when you look at the science, they just don't stand up to scrutiny. So again, there are non-state views of hypnosis. I won't let this take over the conversation. And some of them are completely social, like hard social, they're just pretending. And some of them are more kind of social psychological, like kind of role play. And some of them are more cognitive behavioral, like your reality is made like this. You're a pattern matching machine. And if more information comes in, you can change it. So the AI model, we chipped away everything that we believe to be non-essential. And we kind of reduced hypnosis to qualify something as hypnotic. There must be an accompanying sense of authenticity or non-volition. You could say involuntary, but that suggests a kind of fight. So again, if I just say lift your arm, then you have a subjective experience of doing. And if I say your arm will lift and it begins to lift, your subjective experience changes. It becomes one of experiencing a happening rather than doing something. So with that imagine that's a kind of spectrum, with doing on one end or control on one end and happening on the other, or involuntary on the other. This is the classic suggestion effect. So the classic suggestion effect essentially suggests that you will experience the result of my suggestions as being non-volitional, as being automatic to a greater or lesser degree. So our model, essentially, we kind of look back at everything we've done, and it was like, well, the classic suggestion effect is written into everything, whether it's direct or permissive, authoritarian or Ericksonian. It's right there. There is always a suggestion you would experience this as a happening. So we just started to suggest that overtly rather than tacitly. So we would say, put your hand on the table, imagine it is stuck, continue to imagine it's stuck, and try to lift it. That would give you the experience of kind of role playing this. And then we would say, now put your hand on the table, imagine it's stuck, and imagine there's nothing you can do about it. Imagine you're completely uninvolved in this process, and would create non-volition. And we could rapidly kind of get into all of the hypnotic effects in that way. So AI is the fact that your personal reality is an ongoing act of imagination that you experience with a subjective sense of control or automaticity. And many of our clients who come to see us are seeking a sense of control over a behavior that currently they experience as automatic. And occasionally you see sports people and other performers who want to sense the automatic, but something's got them into trying to swing that golf club properly and things like that. So for the AI model is that it's just an explanation. It's a theoretical model of hypnosis that was already there, actually. I didn't realize until we got deeper into it, but this was very much defined in the 80s, 84, 85, with Chavez and Spanos and Barber. You look at their work and it's completely mind-blowing. And I misunderstood it for a long time. I thought the cognitive behavioral model was basically, saying hypnosis isn't a thing and it should be abandoned. And the fact is, these people love hypnosis as much as anyone else. Yeah. And actually, when you let go of some of the classic frames, which I'm very fond of, and I'm still happy to use words like sleep and trance and deeper. I just believe them to be suggestions, no different from magnets and lighter and stuck. They're just suggestions that suggest state changes. They're not a necessity. And once you get rid of some of that stuff, you see that we can just do this right now with direct suggestion. We begin to work on ourselves right now. I felt like for 15 years I was waiting to get into a deep enough trance to do self-hypnosis. Yeah. Well, now I just kind of feel like, no, just begin.
Let's just start.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's what the AI model is. David's question, and we have the occasional bit of dialogue on Facebook. Have things moved on since then? Because that was a few years back. Actually, they've just, on a personal level, just kind of spun out of control, because the fallout from the AI model forces you to consider things like free will, decision-making, identity, and those concepts start to look as wobbly as things like state and special states and trance states. So a lot of that stuff fell away, and I've basically fallen into a very non-dual perspective on things, and that's now shaping my kind of therapy, because it's like, well, who are we making these changes for? Who am I working with? Who is the one that all of the things you want to do is reporting to? Try and turn toward them. Right. Try and take a step toward yourself.
Something that I really like, and I've heard you refer to this individual more often tonight than almost anybody else, and I see it in things that I've seen you post online. You really seem to have been affected by Spanos. This is the guy that blew my mind, because essentially when Spanos is talking about things like compliance, and essentially coming to the conclusion as one of the greatest figures in the field of hypnosis, here's a man who is essentially proclaiming that hypnosis, as I had come to think about it earlier, really didn't seem to even exist. He threw me for a loop, and a really useful one at that. So since then, one of the real thrusts of everything that I teach, and inspired further by Stephen Gilligan, is, and it came up in an NLP master practitioner training one time when folks were asking me what mastery was about. And basically what I said to them was that I thought that mastery was the skillful avoidance of conclusions. I think we run into trouble as soon as we say, this is how it is. And that it's lovely that you are willing to kind of let go of all the conventional models and say, let's see what's happening here. And
Yeah, and it's kind of still happening. I mean, there is the real joy of it is, even though as essential, we can put aside many of the things we may have thought hypnosis was. What's left is still there. The experience is real. The effect is real, and you can look at that in terms of human potentialities and their imagination being the root into all of that, into really kind of changing our experience. So yeah, I just feel like I misunderstood it and didn't want to look at it too close, but now I have. That's very much where I'm at, kind of theoretically, I guess, but on a personal level, it's had a big impact on me, and partly for the reason you said. We can hold on to things, and in hypnosis, I don't know whether it's because of the icons in the field or because of the nature of training, the investment people put in it, and then they see it working in their class and so on. And they think they perhaps need more of that channel. There is this. It's quite common for people to hold on quite tightly to the theory that they've been taught early on.
We run the risk of being hypnotized by the hypnotists.
Well, yeah, and I think that many of the icons of hypnosis were too. They were doing the best with what they thought they knew, let alone what they thought they had.
Well, there are a lot of great hypnosis trainers too who will tell you flat out, this is the way to do it. This is the one system. This works for everything. Do this system.
Yeah.
And when people train under a trainer like that and they walk away and find out, oh, wait a minute, there's more to it than that, it can be confusing.
Yeah. It is a bit confusing. I mean, it's very difficult because when you're teaching people, sometimes you have to frame it in terms of a system. The way I approach therapy, there is a definite kind of arc of what typically happens in a session, even though it's going to be personalized and things. But it's when you set up camp there that it starts to be a problem.
It's a nice way to say it. There's a question here, and it starts with the word "so." So I have to apologize right away to both Devin, who posted the question, and to you, Anthony, because obviously it was in reference to something that was being said, perhaps a little while ago. But he says, so do you think then that allowing people to experience a lack of control, in quotes, by the way, a lack of control on the greater scale of their entire experience helps them to realize that they actually have more control over their habitual behavior, in the same way that we might first increase their perception of pain to then give them control to dial down their pain perception?
Okay, now let me just take this in like 5 words at a time.
Can you see it? Do you have the chat room?
Yeah, I can see it. Allowing people to experience a lack of control, so have an experience of non-volition on the great scale of their entire experience, helps them to realize they actually have more control over their habitual behavior. Yeah, I guess that's one way of looking at it, but
it shows them, of course, that control is a variable that can change, in the same way that he mentioned that you might amplify a person's pain, for example, so they discover that they can amplify their pain, and consequently that implies that they can.
My preference, let's just bring it to the habitual behavior. My preference is to really point out early on that, by the way it's defined, it is entirely habitual, but it's not just habitual, it's automatic. So the process you go through of, it's that time of day, where's my tobacco? Shall I have a cigarette? I'm going to go outside, is part of the cigarette. It looks like thinking. It looks like a decision. It feels like a decision. And you can go, you can fight with yourself about it. But to me, that's just part of the cigarette, and the nail is going to be bitten. It doesn't matter whether you think that could get caught on my jumper, So my preference is to show people that they have no control over this, that it's not something they should try to control. It's not something they should use willpower for. They shouldn't try to say no to themselves. They should examine this physiological event and recognize that it's entirely predictable, and then just develop an interest in undermining it, damaging it, changing it, You know, not exploring it too far, not understanding it necessarily, but just making it different until that different becomes their new automatic. If the sense of control we have is a variable, as you said, and the sense of control is also automatic. It's changing throughout the day in different environments and different situations, and it can also be changed with suggestion. So I give people an experience of having a lack of control, to kind of point out, you know, what's actually going on with regard to their behaviors that they would like to change, but consciously and, you know, using willpower find they can't change. And then I suggest it will be different, and we do our best. I'm not too fussed about how we get there. As long as thinking of that thing doesn't do what it used to, or walking out of a room doesn't mean they light a cigarette, then it's fine. I'm not sure I'm answering the question, because I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. Let's just get to the last bit.
I think you're going. In fact, he seems to have been satisfied with that.
Okay, good.
So thanks for that. I'm just a little curious, I guess. I don't exactly know how to ask this, but I know that you are, continually on the move, doing new things, developing new things. I'm fascinated with the mystery performers training that you're doing, for example. And what you can tell us about what's ahead for Anthony Jacquin? Where are you going?
Okay, when I used to teach performance hypnosis with Head Hacking, there was very much a focus on the impromptu part of it. You know, we're going to learn this, you're going to go out tonight, you're going to do it, and then we're going to come back and refine it tomorrow. But I get to do this kind of work in lots of different environments. It's not all just kind of pub and bar and street hypnosis. I consult for lots of magicians. There are some mysterious kind of circles in the UK that specialize in creating, spooky experiences and things like that. So my new course is a kind of mix of that. Is how can you do this in this environment, and how can you do it on TV, and how can you do it if you get access to someone beforehand and things like that. And for the last year, I've been doing this weird impromptu seance, which I think you kind of saw in Brazil.
Yes, Andy Demont.
Which really is just a parody of Bob Burns doing therapy. Because he likes to ask crazy questions, and I kind of mean that. I love Bob Burns and I love The Swan. It's fantastic. It's completely fits my repertoire, and I love the invitation at the beginning of The Swan of if your mind is willing to look at this, that hand will move. This is like gold to me. That sentence is just, you can create anything with that sentence.
Yeah.
So I saw Bob at the UK hypnosis convention, kind of doing further developments of it. And once the Swan is speaking, he asks some spooky questions like, are you from Earth? And are you a relative of this person? And things like that, which I struggled with quite deeply at the time, as did Melissa Tears. And we had to kind of have words with him afterwards. But he justified what he was doing. Even though therapeutically that kind of thing's not for me. But outside of that context, I think it can be a very useful tool as well to have fun with. We can try it if you want. I mean, I don't know how much time.
Sure. Well, we've got some time. In
fact, I've kind of got this gallery view, which is quite cool, so I can see.
Oh, the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, it might be kind of fun to try it.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just tell you a little story first? I mean, you may have heard this, Karen.
Yeah, I think there are a bunch of people here who don't know what the Swan is at all. So,
well, that's perfect. So, I'll just tell you this story because I get to meet loads of interesting people.
We love this.
And again, this might work, it might not, but so what, as Bob would say. But one person I met is a guy called Christopher Green, and he's a composer. He writes songs and has a number of different theatre acts in the UK. And he was made artist in residence at the British Library, which is one of the biggest libraries in the world. They have most of the books that have ever been written, and that you can they just said, just create something. And at that time, he'd just got into hypnosis. And he decided, because he was a composer, to go in search of the singing hypnotist, thinking there must have been a singing hypnotist somewhere in the history books or in the archives, the newspaper archives. So he went in search of him and failed to find him. There was never been a singing hypnotist. So he created a show called The Singing Hypnotist himself. And on one side of the stage, he tells the historical part. And on the other side, he becomes this sort of David Bowie type character and whips the audience up into a trance-like frenzy. So along the way, he did uncover a bunch of other people. And I'm going to briefly tell you about one. And this is a true story. It's a lady called Annie de Montfort. Now, she was I guess a kind of late mesmerist, but she was a performer. Just imagine she's a stage hypnotist in the 1860s. And she traveled up and down the UK for about 4 or 5 years, introducing people to the powers of the mind, and the mind governs the world. She was a psychological star, and you see her posters and things. You can find them online. Her name's Annie de Montfort. You'll see many of the motifs that are there in classic hypnotism acts today. Now, she was married to a guy. Michael told me a little extra history about this man, but he was called George, and he was a political agitator in the UK, and he was a spiritualist. So he believed in the other side, try and make contact with spirits and reach through the veil, as it were. And she just didn't believe in this stuff. She's a skeptic. She considered herself a scientist. And George would sit every night with this pendulum kind of hanging and would call out, is there anybody there? Is there anybody there? Is there any spirit in the room willing to speak? And one night George was found dead. So he's just lying on the floor in a pool of blood, his pendulum next to him. Nothing had been stolen, nothing had been disturbed. All that was missing was his right hand. So it looked like it kind of been cut off or chewed off or something. And Annie, being his childhood sweetheart, then, despite her skepticism, would sit with his pendulum each night and try to get to the bottom of what had happened. It would just call out, George, George de Montfort, are you there? And try to get this thing to move and interpret that as some kind of contact. And she, unfortunately, was found in exactly the same condition. She was found dead with her hand missing. Again, they didn't know if it had been cut off or chewed off. But tonight, let's do our best to contact Annie de Montfort. We're going to make contact with Annie de Montfort, and I've never done this online before, obviously, but I'm certain if you pay attention, if you concentrate, and if you open yourself up to this, that some of you will experience this. Not all of you, but some of you will experience this. And for some of you, this will be a profound experience. So what I'd like you to do is put your right hand in the air like this so I can see it on the screen. Make sure it's comfortable. So if you need to support it, you can support it. It's going to be there a little while. And I want you to just say out loud, I'm willing to have this experience.
I'm willing to have this experience.
Yeah, everybody. I'm willing to have this experience. Perfect. Now, I may ask you to nod because you're all kind of muted at the moment. But if you let your hand relax now, so I can still kind of see it, and just give it a shake like this. So it kind of goes into neutral. Then just turn and look at your hand. You don't need to look at me now. Just turn and look at your hand and pay attention to it. Like you were going to try and remember it or draw it. Where does the light fall? Where does the shadow fall? Look at the lines. Look at the lines between those lines. This is when you notice there's kind of more lines than there was before. But just keep looking at it. Do not look away. Now, Annie de Montfort, if you're amongst us, I'd like you to move their hand in some way. Lift a finger, make a muscle twitch, turn it at the wrist. That's right, Michael. Again, some of you are feeling this already. Annie, if that's you, take full control of that hand and begin to turn it toward their face. Make it clear to me, make it clear to them. Turn that hand toward their face. That's right. And some of you will experience this. So again, for some of you, it'll be like a build-up in energy, and then it will start to move. Now, I can really see a couple moving down here. Again, SK Gale, I'm not quite sure what your name is, but Gail, just look at your hand there. And again, Jerry, Arnold, yours is starting to move. I can really see it moving towards your face. And Mary, yours is twitching, and Michael, yours is moving. Now, again, if I may have missed you because I can't look at all of the screens. But Annie, if you can do this, if you can take, just for a time, take full possession of that arm, I'd like you to pull it toward their face. Pull it toward their face, like their head's a magnet and their hand is a magnet. Pull it closer and closer to their face. Now, as it moves towards your face, that's right. Again, if you're willing to have this experience, then you're going to find Annie can take not just control of that arm, but can take control of your body right now. And Annie, I'd like you to remain sitting in the chair. So Annie, I'd like you to remain sitting in the chair all times. And just like, you know, you're just a shell in the chair. And as you sit in the chair, SK Gale, I'd like you to try to stand up. Pretty strange, right? And again, Clark, I'm not sure who else is really feeling this. Again, imagine that. Imagine just for a time, you realize that you're not your body. You're not your body. So Annie can take full control of that. You can even try and stop that hand from moving and find it moves even more. Now, Michael, I don't know if you can kind of unmute. Oh, we can unmute a couple of people here. So, Nikki, you can feel that, right? I'm not sure I can unmute you. SK Gale. Good, nodding. SK Gale. I'd like Annie to do something for you right now. I know it's a crazy idea, but Annie gives me the idea. There's something you'd love to change, something you'd love to feel differently about. And again, the rest of you may experience this too. That's right. Imagine she could just make the changes. So any positive intention could be satisfied, but you could let go of anything you needed to related to that right now, that it could just fall away automatically. Annie, pull that hand even higher so that I understand. You know what to do, the things she can take on board. That's right, things she can let go of automatically. So she can feel happy. Happier and happier, like a weight has lifted, like something has shifted. Annie, if you can do this, pull that hand toward her face. Even closer, so she understands. That's right, it's going to make you smile. And when it touches your face, you're going to know this is done automatically. And in a moment, I will clap my hands. Again, the rest of you, same thing. In a moment, I'm going to clap my hands. And when I clap my hands, Annie, you will be gone. You will leave everyone except SK Gale. You'll leave everyone except SK Gale right now. That's right. Now, Gail, again, Michael, I'm not sure if you can unmute Gail. I want to make sure that she's happy to kind of continue. Is it Gail? I'm not sure of her name. Hello.
Susie is her name, and I'm not really able to unmute her.
How you doing, Susie? Have you experienced this before? No. Okay, but it's interesting, right? So, again, I'm going to show you now how you can go into this state of mind that we've all been calling hypnosis. We don't need to really call it a state or call it a condition. It's almost just a mood. So I would like Annie to leave you now. I want you to look at that hand. You know, and you can ask yourself, you know, how well do you know that hand? I mean, if there were 50 hands in a line, do you reckon you'd recognize that hand? Well, let me ask you this. What does that hand know about you? The hands, it's almost like they know everything when we're in pain, right? It just goes there. It's like the hands know. Yeah? But you can recognize right now, from today, whenever you wish to use hypnosis and experience whatever that would mean to you, to just go there, all you would need to do is sit quietly, repeat the word relax 4 times in your mind. And the 4th time, you would immediately return into this blissful state anytime it's safe and appropriate to do so. And in this state of mind, imagine you have access to all your strengths, all your potential. It's literally a case of using your voice, using your own inner voice and your imagination to change your mind. So from today, whenever you wish to make change or simply use this in a recuperative, restful fashion, all you would need to do is sit quietly and hear that word relax 4 times. In that state of mind, you will remember to use positive terms, but a time on what it is that you want to do or you want to change. And when your unconscious mind knows this, and consciously you accept this, you'll experience that hand nodding, kind of moving in some strange fashion to let you know this is done. Realize this is effortless for you. It's automatic. You know, I sometimes say to people, Susie, do you know what you were thinking this time yesterday? You know, of course, we don't know what we were thinking this time yesterday. So I sometimes ask people, do you know what you'll be thinking 3 thoughts from now? Of course not. What even makes you think you're thinking? And it's exactly the same with feelings. We don't do a feeling. Every thought and feeling you've ever had has come and gone. Even those things that had your knees rattling in the past has gone. And any problem you may experience is just made of thought and feeling. And in the time it takes for this arm to drift down and you to drift up, feeling incredible, you can trust your mind to make the changes automatically that will give you this freedom without even quite knowing what's got into you. Imagine that. You know, we don't need to go into the details because something happens, we imagine something and it becomes an automatic response. And now you remember everything that was bothering you. It was just your imagination. You can stop imagining that anytime. That's right. You can imagine something else entirely, right? Good.
Nice. Nice. Now, I apologize that I wasn't able to open her microphone until finally at the end. So, so Susie, just for the record, your microphone is open, I believe. If you have any comments about that, it was lovely to watch you.
I feel like I've sort of come in from space up there.
Really? Good. I honestly had no plan that was what it would turn into. I was just going to do a spooky seance. But as you were responding so beautifully, I thought we'd, you know, kind of get into how you can use these techniques. They're 3 steps to kind of freedom. I'd love to hear what your experience was.
Just an incredible sense of lightness, I think. A lot of lightness and a lot of, I was like observing it without being attached to it.
Yeah.
So it was fascinating.
Good. Well, that observer position is a good position to take.
Oh, yes.
Take the stand as that.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us, Anthony, and thank you for Susie for your participation there. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. If I might underscore, Anthony, because the folks listening didn't really realize that when we were talking about selection from an audience, what I basically saw you do is that. By the way, when you say Annie, I have the same visceral internal response that I have when Norman Bates says mother.
Yeah, that's kind of where it came from. Yeah, mother. Yeah. And but actually, the reason I say it that way is a little kind of ode to the Manchurian Candidate and how he gets activated by his mother.
Oh yeah,
in the Manchurian Candidate. She says his name and then his name and surname and then Captain such and such. So that's why I deliver that line that way.
Yeah. Well, it's lovely. And by the way, quite an experiment for us. We've not we've not done anything with a whole group like that before, so we really appreciate it, and an interesting challenge for you, and you seem to have risen to the occasion. So
yeah, it was good fun. We had a few potential.
It was lovely. Yeah. It was a good time. And we had great comments like that too, that it was just a lovely process. Thank you, Roy, for commenting on that.
Thanks for that.
All right, so we are coming up to the end of our time here. So the time just flies so quickly. And of course, Anthony, I imagine you're probably just about ready for bed.
Yeah, I'm actually an early riser. I go to bed early and I wake up early. So this is quite late for me, but yes. I have a can of beer and that will send me on my way.
Actually, this is quite early, depending on how you look at it. So
well, that's because you met me in Brazil. I operate a different strategy there, which is.
Yeah. So let me just make a couple comments to wrap up, and then I'll I need you to hang out here just for one more minute, Anthony. And I just want to remind everybody this evening has been recorded. The recording will be posted on the IACT IMDHA forum, and it will be posted on the virtual chapter group on Facebook. So you can see it again tomorrow, and let other people know about it as well if they weren't able to be here. If you're a member of IACT or IMDHA, you can claim your CEUs by going out to the appropriate website, logging in with your member ID and saying, hey, I was there and I deserve credit for that. And look forward to next month when we'll have Alberto Resende de Sola on the air.
One more thing, Anthony, if someone wants to get in touch with you, if they want to find your works and videos and things like that, how would they do that?
Very good.
Well, my website is my name.com, so anthonyjacquin.com. I have a shop there that has a number of different products and a bit of information about training. Maybe Michael will share the links to the training website I run with my dad. We have some dates coming up in the UK and a couple of other countries, which is Jacquin Hypnosis Academy. But if you want to email me, it's just inquiries@anthonyjacquin.com. I'm pretty good at, responding to questions and things like that. And on Facebook.
I do have to point out, Anthony, because you are a Britisher, that is enquiries with an E.
With an E, yes.
Because they'll mess it up on. I certainly would have used an I.
Yeah, I just spell it all. So, but yeah, ENQUIRIES at Anthony with an H, Jacquin, JACQUIN.com. And you can catch me on Facebook. I have a Head Hacking group and a Jacquin Hypnosis Academy. And also, if you're on Instagram, as I said, I've been on this mad mission to kind of reread many of the classics of hypnosis and take notes. And that I was snowed in. So it turned into 21 hypnotists. I have 108 quotes from each. And I'm posting them on an Instagram page called @hypnosisquotes.
Yep.
Just trying to start a bit of conversation, a bit of discussion with some of this stuff from, many of the people we quote now and again. But it's been a good exercise for me. I've actually, I've warmed to Freud and hypnosis a little more than the two-line story I've been telling about it. It's like he was passionate about this stuff too, and most of his doubts about it turned out to have, a ring of truth about them and to be quite insightful. So I've warmed slightly to love, yeah.
Freud was as passionate about this stuff as he was about his mother. And and Anthony, the quotes, I've seen the quotes that you've been posting on Facebook, and it's been lovely to see them. So thanks for that. So I just want to say really quickly, for the benefit of everybody, a few people have asked in the comments section and stuff about the online hypnosis program that Karen and I are doing. The truth of the matter is it came up rather suddenly. We were considering how we might go about doing that, and we had a few people that wanted to create a class. So at least I didn't really do any proper advertising. I don't have a website to send you to or anything. But if you can contact me, that is flhypno@outlook.com, or through Facebook or through the group. Or you can contact Karen Hand at Karen, how is it, your email address?
Karen@KarenHand.com. Pretty simple.
Hand.com, pretty easy to remember. Either one of us will be happy to tell you about it and let you know how you could get involved. And now we are going to do the reckless thing that we do at the end of every program. And it's all on your behalf, Anthony, to send you off to bed with a screech, because we are about to unmute everybody on the call. And in the great cacophony that follows, they will all be able to shout out their good nights and thank yous and how much.
Oh, it's my birthday as well.
Oh, it's your birthday. Well,
No, it's not, unfortunately. But if it was, we would have a grand chorus of happy birthday.
we can have a great chorus. All right. So thank you so very much. And we'll see you around the block somewhere.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Michael. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks.
Happy birthday, Anthony.
Happy birthday, Anthony.
Bye, everybody.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow night.
Keith,
Join us tomorrow night, everybody, for the presentation series.
Ah, yes.
Rory, goodbye. Nikki.
Thanks.